Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Genuinely LG.
GG.
LG.
GG.
And my co-host, Golnesa, is sitting right here.
What do we have in store today, LG?
I don't know. What's the topic, Golnesa?
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. I'm excited to be back in here. We've been having fun with Leila. Leila is learning the ropes, not doing a bad job either. People have been saying really good things. The reviews have been great. People tend to say, can you tell your sister to just shut the fuck up?
Baloney.
No, I'm kidding. They don't. They love the dynamic. They actually enjoy watching this. So it's interesting to read what you guys have to say out there. I have a really cool guest today, you guys, Jillian Hamilton. She's really cool. She's going to have a deep conversation with us about cheating. And me personally, my views on cheating come from a lack of communication. And I want to see what Jillian Hamilton has to say and what Leila has to say about if lack of communication plays a pivotal role in people cheating. So let's talk to Jillian Hamilton now.
You know her from Shaws of Sunset. You know she doesn't hold back.
I don't view cheating the way most people do. People have a confusion. They're like, oh, you're into poly, then you can't cheat. You could just think, I mean, no. Cheating still happens.
This is Genuinely GG.
I'm really excited to introduce our next guest to Genuinely GG because she has probably more stories to tell than I do. And that doesn't happen very often because I've got stories for days. Everybody, please welcome Jillian Hamilton. Welcome, Jillian. Hi, nice to meet you. This is my sister, Leila.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Oh, hey, Leila. How are you? Thank you so much, both of you, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. Oh my gosh, Jillian, because I find it very fascinating, especially your podcast. You guys, Jillian has an amazing podcast, which this whole episode is going to really be around what Jillian sort of does and her choices and her stories. But the name of her podcast is Cheating When Love Lies. Okay, so Jillian, start us off with what is Cheating When Love Lies?
So Cheating When Love Lies is a podcast about infidelity. And even that raises questions because people say, well, what is infidelity? For some people, it's my spouse or my partner is sleeping with someone else, right? That's pretty clear. Everyone agrees that that's cheating. But what about if your spouse or partner is texting with someone, sending them pictures of, your kids or your family, or they're texting with them every time they get great news or something bad happens? And they're the first person that your spouse or partner is going to before you. And you have no idea that they have this secret text back and forth. Is that cheating? So a lot of what happens on the show is deciding what really qualifies as cheating.
So who determines that exactly? Who makes that decision that this is considered cheating? And how did you insert yourself into this role? How did this become something for you to create? How did you create this concept and say, I want to go forward and hear these stories and try to come to a conclusion that this is this or that is that?
Yes. So I came up with the concept because I had experienced cheating in my family household growing up and also on both sides as an adult. So I felt like I had a lot of perspective around the notion of cheating. And when I was very open and honest and spoke about it, there really wasn't anybody, certain age, okay, so let's say 30 and older, that couldn't say, been there, know it, or my sister experienced it, or my brother experienced it, or my father, or my mother. Everyone I spoke to had some experience with infidelity, whether it was their own or someone else's. And I realized it wasn't being talked about in a way where you got to hear the story behind the story. So Esther Perel, the great Esther Perel, many, many years ago, she had brought this topic to the fore, but she's a trained, professional clinician who would help people figure out what to do. I'm not that. I'm a big sister. Right. I want to hear your story. I'm not going to judge you. I want to hear the story behind the story. So you slept with your neighbor's husband. Why did you do it? What happened? What were the consequences? and what was going on in your internal narrative that made you do it. So it really is the story behind the story. And I'm very proud of the fact that we never really get salacious. It's
Right.
not about outing people. And in fact, I often disguise people's names and voices because it's not about gotcha. It's
Right.
really about trying to understand.
I watched a couple of your podcasts and listened to them, and I appreciated that you did do that. You gave people a John Doe, or so that was nice to protect
Thank
people.
you.
And I'm sort of on the same path as you. I'm probably a little bit higher in a different path in my degree of it, extremity, but because I am into polyamorous relationships, and I don't view cheating the way most people do. It's cheating still exists for me, which people have a confusion. They're like, oh, you're into poly, then you can't cheat. You could just sleep. I mean, no. Cheating still happens. So that brings me to you and asking you, you have all these stories that you've heard. Based on your experience, would you say that there is a commonality in gender for cheating, male versus female?
I would say it's 50-50.
Interesting.
Especially once we go back again to what defines cheating. So let's answer the latter. If cheating is defined by some sort of secret relationship that eventually ends up having some sort of sexual component, then there's a lot of cheating going on. Think about what goes on in social media and the internet, which
Right.
you DM people, which you text people, etc. So, and then there's this idea, that it was mostly reserved for men, but women are so empowered now. We've got jobs, we've got money, we have resources, we're out in public, we're not just at home.
Right.
So we have all that access. Access is what creates a cheating environment. If you have access to others, greater access, greater opportunity, and then some sort of lack or longing, it creates the environment for cheating and infidelity.
Do you think that one alone can play its own factor, meaning just having access to it plays a factor? Or do you think that there must be an underlying personal issue in the relationship dynamic? Because I often hear men, women, both always wanting to blame the relationship for their cheating. I'm not being valued enough. I this, and I don't have, he doesn't sleep with me, or she doesn't sleep with me. I don't often hear people say, I need more of this. I need this to be happy. I made the mistake. I was wrong in my own self and honesty by committing to something that I shouldn't be in. You don't hear people say that very often. You hear people blame the relationship. So do women tend to, because women, we are naturally more emotional than men, do you hear women tend to blame the relationship, the man, for their cheating reasons? Or is it more because of independence, power, and access?
Great question. And I'm ruminating as you ask it, because I would tend to say it's the former. Something is wrong in my relationship, and this is my justification for behaving the way that I do. Recently, I had on a great guest, Dr. Jennifer Gutman, and she talked about how there are these men, typically middle-aged men, that it's becoming somewhat of a phenomenon in her practice, that they go online on Instagram and they look at beautiful women such as yourself, right? They're going to see great, attractive young women, and they're just going to look. And they might text back and forth or send music with the woman, or, talk about dreams and aspirations, but they have no intention of ever even seeing or sleeping with this woman. I said, Jennifer, you can't tell me that these men are going on Instagram to look at these women and there's no aspiration of ever hooking up? She's like, no. Goes on for 4, 5, 6 years. And then the wife finds out and she's devastated because she can't believe that her husband has been carrying on, but here's the linchpin, and that has caused him to have less sex with her. Because now what he's idealizing on Instagram becomes comparative. This beautiful woman that I'm texting with or DMing with on Instagram is quote unquote better than my wife, and it diminishes the guy's desire for his wife, and he stops having sex with her. And that's where the problem comes in.
Is it maybe the emotional relationship that they're having? Is it the emotional relationship that they're upset about?
Yes, I think it's the fact that, do we qualify that as emotional? I would say so. I mean,
I
I
think
wouldn't
so
like it
too.
personally
Me neither.
if my partner was going online, finding women that he esteemed, quote unquote, better, more attractive, younger, sexier than I, sharing with them, not telling me, and here's the clicker, caused him to have less sex with me. So now it's impeding, that behavior is impeding on our relationship. And that just seems very difficult, whether that would be happening for a man or a woman.
Yes, he had these aspirations, but at the end of the day, he was a waiter. You know, everybody comes to LA for the bright lights. Let's be real. We're born and raised in LA. We kind of like shied away from the lights.
I'm on TV, bitch.
Well, it came knocking on your door. You didn't go look for it.
True. Do you think the role shifts based on power and money, and well, I guess money is power? Do you see people being more okay to having someone that's cheating on them? For instance, athletes are infamous. Artists, musicians are infamous for this lifestyle, right? The groupies and all that. And their wives usually are aware of the groupies and they have their own rules in the relationships and whatnot. But when do you think it becomes not okay in these rules? These women are saying, obviously, he's successful, he's powerful, he's rich. Maybe one day I'm going to, cash out or have my payout on what this is. Right. So I'm okay with whatever women he's off sleeping with.
Or they're willing to overlook it because of the lifestyle that they
are
because
they're thinking
living.
There's a payday one day.
Well,
something's
and they're having a
it.
payday at the moment. They're living that lifestyle.
Private jets, all that stuff.
They're like, well, maybe I won't bring it up, even though they know inside something's happening.
Yes.
They might not mention it and not spoken, it didn't happen kind of thing.
I agree with your point of view 100%. And, then how do we look at these women? Often they're qualified as the woman that you've just described. This poor thing, she has no self-esteem. She's, being victimized. I mean, I don't know. Sorry to break the myth, but she probably has people, right? He's off playing this game or touring. Let's not assume she doesn't have people, one. And number two, that she's not very well aware of the exchange.
Right.
For this particular woman, it could be a viable barter. I have a beautiful lifestyle. My kids are protected. I'm safe in exchange for this. I'm not saying that I would do it. I'm not saying that you would do it. I'm not advocating for it. But I do believe that there's a space, obviously, because women like this, as do I, that are okay living in this dynamic.
Just like you said, I know so many of these really wealthy couples.
Yes.
And it's just unspoken. And both the husband and the wife have their own thing going on. And I think they both know about it, but they choose to just ignore that fact. Thursdays, I'm out, basically. Now, they don't ask what's going on Thursdays, but we know what's going on Thursdays.
Half of the world is living in a polyamorous relationship without calling it a polyamorous relationship because of society saying you're supposed to be married, man, woman. This is what the norm is, right? I mean, if everyone were to just call it what it is, we're in a big polyamory fuck fest.
I don't want a polyamory fuck fest.
You're in one. You were in one. You were in one.
Not by choice.
Well,
I was
choice
loyal,
or not, it's happening. We just should accept that it's going to happen.
No, I don't agree with you on that.
Jillian, you should actually have my sister on your podcast because she has a very good story. Leila, do you want to briefly tell Jillian? Because I think this is a good topic of conversation of cheating. Because I don't identify with cheating. I was married for 2 days, literally. And I told the guy, if I'm not around and there's a hot chick, I don't care if you do a quickie or I don't care.
I care.
Right. A lot of people do.
And I was in a relationship for about 13 years. And I always had that inclination. And I'm not a stupid girl, let me tell you. There's not a lot that gets by me. So when people around me knew and I didn't know,
Oof.
You know, I know they assume like, oh, how stupid could she be? I wasn't. I was checking everything because he gave me reason to doubt different things.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and then at the end of our marriage, he wasn't really hiding it. He was like, yes, and I'm leaving. And then come to find out after we're going through our divorce that this has been happening through and through probably for 13 years.
I mean, things have
But
been caught on like
wasn't
nanny
doing
cam
my
type
own
of
thing.
stuff.
Yeah,
you
nanny
know?
cam. I mean, not nanny cam. I had cameras in my house. My
just
kids
calling
were
it
there.
nanny cam.
My live-in was in there. Didn't even feel the need to hide it anymore. I was out of town. We were
Right.
in New York for that. We were doing press for the hair company.
And that's what we were saying earlier. When the relationship or the marriage deteriorates to such a point that you don't even care anymore, it's very viable for either person to go off and find solace in some other person's arms. But to go to the polyamory piece, because I have had a couple, they were both psychologists. I don't know if you heard the episode, and they're polyamorous. So not only do they educate through their practice, but they also live the lifestyle. And they were saying, just like you were, that you can still be unfaithful in a polyamorous relationship. It's not because you're in a polyamorous relationship that there are no rules.
Correct.
And what I came to learn and understand, and I'm not polyamorous, and I'm trying to understand the culture clearly because it's relevant to my topic of my podcast, is that there's still rules. It doesn't mean that you just get to go out and do whatever you want. There's certain expectations that may not be socio-normative, that may not speak to the norms of society, but there's still rules. And there are, primary partners and secondary partners.
There's a lot of terms. There's so many. There's non-hierarchical. There's different terms, I would have to be honest with you, for being involved in this lifestyle for a year and a half now, reading extensively, just talking to people. The only thing that I think is different from any traditional relationship, and I mean, this is the only thing, is that there's no ego in a polyamorous relationship.
There has to be.
There's no ego. You see, when you are so,
I don't agree.
No, it's a different. It's an understanding that the love that they get.
It's impossible that they don't get jealous.
Stop interrupting me and hear me out. It's impossible for you to get not to get jealous because you're insecure with your own self. That's jealousy is only an insecurity of self.
I don't think that people are only insecure if they're jealous. I mean, I don't know if that's your sister, so you're revealing something personal about her.
No, I think that is, even in psychology, when you stem where jealousy comes from, it is a negative emotion. That is in psychology. It's Psych 101, literally. Jealousy is a lack of something in yourself. What are you being jealous of? You're getting jealous of something that you feel is not being given to you.
No, because if you're in a committed relationship and then there's an understanding.
An understanding of
that
what?
We have a monogamous relationship.
That's different. I'm not saying breaking rules. I'm saying the only difference is a lack of ego. When you don't have ego, you realize it makes no difference for me if this man has another woman that he loves, if the love that he gives to me and the sex or the passion, all the things you can list do not change and stay constant. Why do you care what else he does? How does it affect you?
I would assume that the majority of people out there,
because the majority
would
of people
agree
are
with me
egotistic,
rather than having their. What about like STDs?
No. This is not a sexual thing, and more people who are in monogamous relationships are fucking other people on the side than in polyamorous relationships. Again. You can do that statistic. I can show it. I can give you the numbers on that statistic, honey. People in polyamorous relationships barely cheat because the openness of communication is there. It's present. I have desired this other person. I would like to introduce this person into our relationship.
Oh, so it's like a threesome?
No. Some of them are, but a lot of them are not.
Yeah, that's
some of them are. I don't know too many that are. I've read that there are. I don't know anyone that's, I interviewed someone on the podcast that had a sixsome. It was 6 of them. And my first question was STDs. And she said, we have a very big understanding between ourselves that we will never sleep with anyone else. We get tested and we trust ourselves. And they don't use protection. That's poly. I want to go back to talking to Jillian about cheating. So Leila was cheated on, right?
Okay.
But leading up to the divorce, leading up to the cheating, as an outsider, I was able to see that it was not a healthy relationship dynamic. He moved here to go after different dreams and inspirations of modeling and acting and, that lifestyle. Okay. And my sister is very business, go, 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 money, 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 right? So they met. She was like, turned him into this other person. And now he's like this money-making machine guy. But there was this resentment he started holding to her. Like, I could have been this famous actor or model or this or that. And you didn't, let me. So this misplaced anger, maybe they were changing in their own lives. Maybe he was changing. Maybe she was changing. And the misplaced anger became blaming the relationship. The relationship was being blamed for the cheating. When both, in my opinion, both were just going this way.
Right.
Nothing in fucking common, Jillian. Nothing in common.
That's difficult. Yeah.
Right?
Nothing in common. Nothing.
So do you agree that it was leading up to that?
I'm not saying our relationship was healthy or good in any way. And yes, he did hold resentment because he had these aspirations of being, everybody comes to LA for the bright lights. Let's be real. We're born and raised in LA. We kind of like shied away from the lights.
I'm on TV, bitch.
Well, it came knocking on your door. You didn't go look for it.
True.
But the difference is, yes, he had these aspirations, but at the end of the day, he was a waiter. Like,
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Well,
but what precluded him from continuing those aspirations congruent to becoming a business person?
That was his own choice. He made that choice himself.
That's also living in LA will do that to you.
Well, and the lifestyle that we lived, he came from a completely different socioeconomic background than our family. And
I mean, my sister was like 22 and bought a 6-bedroom house, and driving a Porsche convertible. You know what I mean? So it was very different. Even if you meet them today and you see their kids, you could see which kid is more like which parent. They're just so different. So different.
He could have continued to pursue if that was really his dream and passion, he could have continued it as a side thing. When we were going to get married, I was like, dude, come on. Like, you need a real job.
See, there it is. There it is.
Waiting tables,
That's
bringing in $100 a night. I called it the petty cash account. My money would go into our joint account. His money was like one dinner.
Jesus Christ.
I would pay the bills for the first 8 years of our marriage or of our relationship.
And what you're saying is that over time, that resentment built up in him, and that's when he began to stray?
No, he was straight. He was one of those that he gets his validation. There's a lot of men out there that get their validation from the opposite sex. It was always the wandering eye. I mean,
he's one of those guys like to charm every woman.
But he has that insecurity where he needs that security by getting validation from the opposite sex. That's how he feels like a man.
Yes.
I feel like the show that I was on, this my friend Mike Shue had, I think throughout
Mike's
the 9
exactly
seasons,
the same way. Sorry,
he's
Mike.
been married and he's now engaged, but throughout time, his stories always come out to that. I don't see why the women that he's with get so upset, because he's honestly just getting validation on social media. He might have hooked up with a couple of them. I think it's the ego that just needs to get rubbed sometimes.
Well, that's his insecurity as well.
Exactly.
And he gets that validation from the opposite sex. It makes him feel like he's wanted, like he's more of a man. And, speaking of Mike, he told me about 20 years ago, he was my best friend about 25 years ago. He told me that all men cheat. And I told him, no, not all men.
Not all men. Probably all the men because birds of a feather flock together.
Have you ever stolen before? When you were younger or teenager?
When I was a kid, yes.
So you're a thief. For the rest of your life, you should be blacklisted as a thief. You're a kleptomaniac.
I was like 7 years old.
Who cares? Jillian, let me ask you this. Do you think underlying, based on all the stories that you've probably heard and listened to, your girlfriends, your guy friends, just the people you interview, everyone, would you say a similarity in issues in coming to cheating would be a lack of communication?
Oddly, I rarely talk about a lack of communication. It's always something much more visceral. It's like what you were saying, Leila. That I resent her because she took my career away. I resent him because he's never home with the kids. It's not like, oh, gee, honey, if we could talk more, things would be better. There's a real deep underlying resentment or feeling of being denied. It's not so much that I hear, oh, if only we were talking, this never would have happened.
No. I don't mean that, but I do mean the pain that's sometimes associated with being cheated on. Sometimes the cheating may not need to even take place if you're able to communicate that it's just not working out and you could spare this person that you've cared about for so long or claimed to love. Instead of going out and actively pursuing a desire, say to them, something here is not working for me. And before I cheat and hurt you, I need to let you know that I think that this is what I need to do. Or whatever the words are. I'm just putting random words together. Yeah. But I think to me, that is the communication right there. It's the just saying, this isn't working for me. Or I desire to just look at women on social media and I just like to get likes. That's all. I swear, or honey, I need to go and be with someone else.
That was the case that we just talked before. Some of these guys that would go on and look at the women on Instagram, they got found out. And then they'd say, honey, nothing's ever going to happen. And she'd say, but you're looking at those pictures means that you don't want sex with me. So regardless of whether you see this woman or have sex with her, it's affecting our relationship. And he says, I'm sorry, I can't stop. I need it. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel validated. It makes me feel young. And she says, but it's hurting my feelings and it's hurting our sex life. So now you're at an impasse. So you're communicating.
So then you break up.
Let's play that tape forward. Can you afford it? Do you have children? Do you have health issues? A lot of times I hear about, well, just break up. And I always say, yes, in some cases you may be able to, but really play the tape forward.
I can actually play the tape in 20 years forward and say and show the psychological damage that's caused on children for parents who stay in a very undesired and unwanted marriage for the sake of, quote unquote, the children. They say, oh, when the last kid goes to college, we'll divorce, we'll leave each other. And it's a miserable relationship. It's a relationship where mom and dad don't respect each other. And the child
worse for the kids.
Sees that and they stop respecting women if it's a boy, or the woman thinks this is how I'm supposed to get treated by men if it's a girl. So I am flash forwarding 20 years down and I would say break up, because if it's not working and if the negatives outweigh the goods and it's certain things that can't be changed for the sake of your future therapy sessions.
So much easier said than done.
No, it's not.
It absolutely
when you put your
is.
emotions to the side, and it's logical.
But it's all emotional. Relationships are emotional.
No, they're all
you can't
logic.
put your emotional.
It's emotional and it's practical. And I'm not here to talk about any one individual, what it would happen in your tape forward 20 years or my tape forward 20 years.
Right.
But for every story about people that could just do it, I got off the phone with a woman yesterday who said, I did it and now I'm broke. Wow. And I have no way. He was a son of a bitch. He never gave me anything. And now I don't know how I'm going to buy groceries next week. Now, we could all say she's more empowered. She's going to find a way. She's a very strong woman. I believe in her. But some people may not be.
Right.
Some people may not have the emotional constitution to go it alone. And so I just try, that's where it goes back to being non-judgmental or just really listening. And I think there's an audience for everyone.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you, in the work that you do you believe once a cheater, always a cheater?
That's a tough one. I think there's a large proclivity toward it, and I hate to be cryptic, it depends on what you qualify as cheating. You might say, okay, I had this example. The guy was like, I don't sleep with anyone. I said, oh, that's great. Well, I have oral sex, but I'm not having sex with anyone.
Same thing.
I find absolutely no logical sense to that, to be quite honest with you.
Once a cheater, to me,
okay, so once an addict, always an addict. Once an asshole, always an asshole.
If you're an addict, you might be in recovery, but you're always an addict. That's what they say.
No, that's absolutely not true.
You're in recovery.
And okay, have you ever stolen before? When you were younger or teenager?
When I was a kid, yes.
So you're a thief. For the rest of your life, you should be blacklisted as a thief. You're a kleptomaniac.
I was like 7 years old.
Who cares? You did it once.
I took
That's
a
what you are.
chapstick.
It defines who you are for the rest of your life. Absolutely not. You can't say once means always. That means nobody has room for change or growth or evolution. Fuck that. I live in a world where I'm never
I won't say
ending
it's
adapting.
100%, but I believe it's a very, very, very like 99.999%.
I can't qualify what the number is, and it's a very hard number to qualify.
It's a
because
fake
again,
number.
It's a fake number.
It's the fakest number I've ever heard in my life.
It always goes back to, what do you think is cheating? What do you qualify as cheating?
Right.
This guy that said, well, I'm not a cheater anymore. I don't have sex. I only have oral sex. So he's going to fill out the form saying, do you still cheat? Saying no.
Yeah.
So it really depends on how the person views it. But I do support both of your arguments,
Right.
that people do have a proclivity and they stick with it. And then also people can have an epiphany and change. Like, I did that. It ruined my life. I'm never doing that again. It's not worth it to me.
I agree. I think it all comes down to the definition of cheating. And I think that's where I would, again, go on to what I was saying about communication. I think in the beginning of any relationship, whether we're dating or getting serious, if we can communicate our desires with each other, our needs, and say, you know what, this gets my socks off when I just, my rocks off when I just look on social media and, you know, get this kind of attention from women. If this is something that's okay with you, that's all. Whatever it is, I'm going to stick with communication is key. Sometimes you will find someone who wants to be with other people and you never know. That person might be okay with it. You know, they just might be okay with it. So just kind of express it. Jillian Hamilton, I am so happy to have had you on the show. I really do think that you need to get Leila to tell the full story because there's stories. There's a lot to it. Okay. You guys, if you want to know more about Jillian Hamilton, you can find her at jillianhamilton.online. She has the most amazing podcast with you guys. The stories are insane. They are good stories. Cheating, When Love Lies. Do not miss her podcast. Check her out website. Thank you so much for being here, Jillian.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. It was a great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Well, that was a great episode with Jillian.
It was fantastic.
She's heard a lot of stories.
She has.
You have to do her podcast and tell your story. You definitely have to. I'm sure your story for her is like, oh, nothing. I mean, I've heard her podcast.
My story's pretty crazy.
No, it is. It definitely is. But one thing that I could not agree with the two of you on was things that cause for cheating. It's not necessarily, to me, access to what's out there.
I agree.
Okay, well, I think it does come down to communication. I really do. We talked about that. We even said, you know, with Jillian, if the issues are present and they're, for instance, on their social media doing this and that, why can't you just communicate that? If you love the person, just say, hey, this like turns me on. If there's a fear of cheating that's going to lead into something else, then that woman or that man needs to communicate that. I'm afraid this is going to turn into something else. And then it's the next person's turn to reciprocate communication.
I think it just boils down to boundaries, and everybody's list of boundaries.
Communication. How do you set boundaries by
you need
communicating
to have communication in any relationship, whether it's with 20 people like you like or just one that I like. You have to have boundaries. So.
Woodstock, woo! Oh my gosh. Either way, I mean, this is why we do live in a world with a lot of cheating that's happening. I mean, it's just more common than we even talk about. We shouldn't judge it because honestly, every other person that you know has been cheated on, has cheated.
I judge. I judge a cheater.
Don't
if
judge.
If you're a cheater,
don't
I judge you.
Don't judge. You
might
might just be in a wrong relationship.
If you're a cheater.
Hello, bitches. I am the bomb. Okay. Anyways, follow my route into weed and poly. It's the way of life. Okay. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Genuinely GG.
Thanks for listening to Genuinely Gigi. Download new episodes every week. And if you haven't already, subscribe. And be sure to leave us a rating and review. And while you're at it, check out some of the other great shows available on Straw Hut Media.